reflection about last class.
Go ahead.
I think that sometimes it's hard to relate to Arjuna being on the battlefield and facing the situation. But if we think about it as any sort of situation where we face the possibility of personal loss, it's the same thing for us. And I thought it was really interesting how Krishna, by the end of it, he doesn't deliver Arjuna from the situation. He just makes Arjuna understand it differently, and that's the benefit. So it's not always that, like, everything still happened, like everyone who Arjuna was worried about dying did die, etc. It was just a different mentality.
Yes, that's a very valid point. Just one second, Vidal was saying something. That's a very good reflection, Delia. Sorry for the distraction, as my browser was giving me trouble. So, yes, Krishna does not, I guess, give a direct solution to Arjuna. Rather, he helps Arjuna to align his actions and his understanding with Krishna's will. And I guess when we do that, then we can overcome any obstacle, like Arjuna was able to overcome the biggest obstacle, the biggest challenge of his life. And I guess every lesson is actually meant to teach us that we need to align our desire with Krishna's desire. And it may be hard sometimes, like it was hard for Arjuna to get to that point. No.
I think at every step of our spiritual life, right, there is that same choice that we all have to make. It may not be such a significant choice like Arjuna had to make, but nevertheless, it's always a choice, right? We have to somehow remove or redirect our attachment. We have so many places where we are sort of stuck with our attachments. So bhakti is all about bringing those attachments and redirecting them for the satisfaction of Krishna. So.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. And so we'll go through text 31 today. I think 31 we did, yes, last time. Anybody has any reflections on, we talked about selfishness and how our real self-interest lies in Krishna. So does anybody have any comments or reflections on selfishness? Real selfishness versus false selfishness. Okay, are we allowed to be selfish in spiritual life? Let me put it this way.
Yes. Because you're in the spiritual, this thing, if you realize the spiritual, yourself is not, I mean, your true self is your connection with Krishna, then yes, so the selfishness would come, means whatever you do for yourself, because once you do it for Krishna, then yourself is also satisfied. So that in a way, that's a selfishness within the spiritual realm.
Thank you, Nanda Prabhu. Anybody else? What does it mean to be selfish? And what does it mean to be selfless in spiritual life?
In 24 hours that I have, I take so much time to do all the mundane activities. If I can keep aside few hours for my time with Krishna, that is being selfish in spiritual life, I think, and that is okay, and that's how we should be.
Okay. Thank you, Prativa. Anybody else? What does it mean to be selfish and what does it mean to be selfless in spiritual life? Eric, do you have any thoughts?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So when it means to be selfish versus selfless, when it comes to devotional service, pretty much when you're like if you're selfish in a sense where it's being devoted towards Krishna, meaning like you're fully focused and concentrated on inwardly and Krishna within yourself, then that's not considered, it's considered like a good sense of selfishness. But and then also something like some of the stuff we discussed last class, pretty much to be a devotee is a sense, is like a selfless act, because the greatest good is the will of Krishna. So when we devote ourselves to Krishna, it is a sense of selflessness because we're completely focused on the greater good for all.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So being selfless means being not so concerned about our body and mind, or not focused on our material attachments. And selfish means, real selfishness means being attached to Krishna's desire, right? So not being attached to our desires, material desires, is selfless. And being attached to Krishna's desire and will is being selfish, real selfishness. How can we apply this in the wrong way? Because spiritual life is good and we want to take care of our spiritual life, but can you think of a way in which we can apply this whole thing in the wrong way? Somebody who hasn't spoken.
I'm thinking of an example of like someone that's too entrenched in the mode of goodness, for someone that does like devotional acts as a way of like inflating their self-importance or like making themselves seem superior to other people, or like alienating themselves in a way that kind of like ostracizes everyone else or makes them feel like the other.
Yeah, that's a very good example. We just too focused on our spiritual life and not care for anything else, what's happening around us.
Or try to run away from your duties, saying, I'm following the path of Krishna, and not take care of your, kith and kin, or the duty towards your kith and kin.
Yes, so if you become judgmental or harsh or neglectful of our responsibilities in this world in the name of spirituality, then that's kind of applying this whole principle in the wrong way. And that happens many times in the beginning when somebody takes to spiritual life. They're feeling insecure about their spiritual life, and I guess they want to protect it, but in that situation sometimes they kind of, in order to protect their turf, people can sometimes become harsh and judgmental to kith and kin or anybody else who seems to challenge their spiritual life. So I guess the key is to always understand that spiritual life is a gradual process, and it's not by becoming like severely austere or severely knowledgeable that we can conquer Krishna, but it is with our gradual practice and with our uh, qualities that we will attract Krishna's pleasure. And that's what we are trying. And being kind to everybody and compassionate to everybody is part of being Krishna conscious. It is part of spiritual life. Those qualities are very, very important for the development of our real Krishna consciousness.
It's so,
So, yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
just thinking that it's so interesting, right? That right now, our own sense of self-interest is so deeply rooted in the welfare of this body. And I was just actually thinking about it just this morning that, when I take care of this body, or, so I have such a sense of well-being, and rightfully so. I mean, we exist in two different dimensions simultaneously. At the same time, what is our relationship with this body? you know it's such a temporary relationship, and it just, at one point we leave this body, right? And this body doesn't go along with us too far. So that relationship is so it's such a strong sense of identification that we think that my self-interest is the interest of my body and its own pleasures or whatever else, its protection. And so then I was thinking that, yeah, when we shift that sense of identification with Krishna to Krishna, then just like we feel so possessive about our body, right? And we go to such great lengths just to preserve our body, and we'll do anything. Same thing, that love will be then directed towards Krishna.
Yeah, that's a very good point, that we see ourselves as kind of non-different from Krishna in that sense, that our interests are combined, or they're the same.
Yeah, I think Delia has written such a nice point here. She says, we spend our lives trying to satisfy our own desires, which is absurd because we don't really know what makes us happy. What we want changes all the time. Even if we get what we want, it doesn't stay that way. We die and everything gets left behind anyways. It's a fool's race. And what keeps us from surrendering is the idea that we can win at the game. We just haven't tried hard enough, or we are not good enough, or it's external circumstances keeping us down. And if we could only catch a break. Impossible. We are trying to be the controllers, and for what? Yeah. And I think there's such a beautiful verse, right, where it says, right, that I've been serving these masters, for such a long time, and which are the senses, and they've never been satisfied in spite of serving them for such a long time. And I really like what you're saying, Delia, about like how every time we find that we haven't gotten there yet, we see so many reasons. That's actually the cause of my failure, right? That if I could just do this or I could do that, then somehow I could attain, or I could win this game. Very nice.
Yeah. So, and I guess also the separation in our mind that, okay, I so many hours of my day are for Krishna and the rest are for myself. That kind of division in our life also kind of tends to keep us in two worlds. We want to be in one world. Even this material world is actually Krishna's world. So it's not that this material world is not Krishna's, and the spiritual world is Krishna's. So I guess kind of thinking that everything that I'm doing is spiritual life. Even my work and taking care of the family and anything else, running errands, everything is part of my spiritual life. And that's how we want to be, 24 hours a day Krishna conscious, by thinking that everything I'm doing is for Krishna's satisfaction. It may not be directly linked to it, but in our consciousness, if that is what we are thinking, then it will be linked to Krishna, and not creating that distinction that this is for Krishna and this is for me. All right. Because this is what Arjuna was thinking. He was creating that distinction. So we'll continue. Text 31. Nacha Shreyonu Pashyami Hatva Sajana Mahave Na Kangshe Vijayam Krishna Nacharajyam Sukhanicha. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, and happiness. So, just looking at Arjuna's statement, how do you analyze this statement? There are several important clues in this statement that apply to us.
Can you just scroll it down because we can't see the translation?
Okay. Can you see now?
Yeah.
Well, what can we say about Arjuna's consciousness here, or his focus here? How does that apply to us?
He thinks that he is the doer, like he is the one who is in charge, and he's the one who's going to be doing the like fighting in the battle and killing the people. So he thinks he's the one who's in charge.
Very, very nice point. The doer mentality. The doer mentality and also the enjoyer mentality, right? You can see in the second part, he says, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. So those are all something to be enjoyed. Victory, kingdom, and happiness, they are meant to be enjoyed. So that's Arjuna's enjoyer mentality. And the first part is controller mentality. Anybody else? What do we see here in Arjuna's consciousness?
Deep attachment to his so-called temporary family.
Deep attachment, yes. What else?
So Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I was thinking that like running away from duties, that's what I can relate it to. Like if I don't do my duties, or if I do my duties with the expectation of getting a happiness out of doing that duty or not doing that duty, that's what here Arjuna is trying to tell us. Like if I don't do my duty, go away, then it will bring me a happiness.
Yes, very nice point, Vishal. Thank you. Yeah, we can see, first of all, Arjuna is acting as a seer here. I do not see. That's the key word here, anupashyami, which means I do not foresee. So Arjuna is already trying to foresee what good can come. And when Prabhupada talks about, we don't even know the definition of good, what is good for us. So not knowing what is really good for us and for ourselves, I guess we always make a mistake in judging what is good for me and what is good for others. And as a result, even with all the best intentions, when we are trying to do good for others, Prabhupada says, you don't even know what is good for others. So how can you really do any good in the world? And how can we do any good for ourselves? So this is Arjuna's first mistake, that he is acting as a judge for what is good and what is not good. And this is the classic conditioned mentality of portraying ourselves or thinking ourselves as I know what is good and I can see. So, but our vision is so limited, we can't really see anything. If there's darkness, we can't even see what's in the room. So how can we see? And therefore, I guess we have to learn to see through the eyes of Krishna's words. What is reality and what is illusion? We have to first understand that. And then we can actually understand what is good for us and what is not good for us and others as well. So that's the first flaw that we see in Arjuna's thinking here, and that's the flaw that we all suffer from. And the second mistake we see here is desire. So this is Arjuna's, and this is very interesting that Arjuna is not speaking to anybody else, like his some family member or somebody else. He's directly speaking to Krishna, and he's speaking in a very authoritative way that I do not see. And in a way, he's challenging Krishna that, can you see any good coming out of this battle? And also, even if you see that some good will come out of this battle, but I do not desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness, even if you can see any good coming out of this battle. So he's kind of making a statement in front of Krishna that I do not see any good and I do not desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. And he's kind of showing our own heart here, that we have such strong feelings about what is good and what is not good for us, and what I want in this world. This is what
About we were talking about how like the things that we want motivate us, but they're unsatisfactory. And I think this is a good example of the other example where Krishna is talking about the things he doesn't want. He thinks that he's fighting for victory, kingdom, or happiness. And he says, I don't want it, I'm not interested. And he's saying that since he's not interested, then he doesn't see why he should carry out his duty if that's not what he wants.
Very good point. It's a very good point that sometimes we, even if you don't desire something, if you don't desire something, then we don't want to do it, right? And duty is beyond our desiring and not desiring.
Yeah, such a nice point. I guess the other thing I was also thinking was, as I was reflecting on this verse, is that how Krishna allows for the living entity to express and be such a person, right? That, like in this, you see the individuality of Arjuna coming through. He's talking about, it might be limited vision, it may be imperfect vision. His desires are obviously not well placed. But Krishna's relationship with each living entity is based on this, allowing this freedom, right, to express that desire or to try out those desires. And even Krishna just, he respects what Arjuna can see or not see. I mean, in the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, all right, I've spoken, now you can decide what you want to do. So that relationship, of preserving and respecting the individual choice is there even in this verse.
Yes, that's a very good point, that how Krishna is allowing us to express. Any other thoughts?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So yeah, it's on the same lines. I was thinking that we do this all the time. Anything which is in front of us, we always create this like a balance sheet in our head, that whether it's a profitable, whether it's not, whether it's a profit or loss, what's in it for me. And even though I don't want it, if I don't want it, I won't do it. If there's something really good in it for me, then only I should do it, I think.
Yes, exactly. And that's going to come out even more in the next few verses. What's in it for me? So text 32 through 35.
I just wanted to share that in the beginning, our advancement in Krishna consciousness may have a very strong component, right? We chant because it feels peaceful. We serve Krishna because, I feel happy. And so, it's all right in the beginning, as we progress, then naturally that refinement of our desire will happen. But in the beginning, we may start the process simply because I'm looking for some relief from my anxieties and my stress, right? I'm looking for happiness.
Yeah, that's a good point, that it is okay to seek that relief. And Krishna wants us to be happy. So being happy is not something prohibited in spiritual life. Krishna wants us to be happy in spiritual life, and then that motivation is not a wrong motivation. And as we experience spiritual happiness more and more, we'll experience that happiness, and we can't deny that happiness. We should not deny that happiness. And we are actually after that eternal happiness. So that's a good kind of selfishness, to seek that spiritual happiness. We don't want to be morose and always denying our happiness in spiritual life. Rather, we embrace our spiritual happiness. But that's a gift that Krishna gives us. So we want to accept that gift from Krishna, the spiritual happiness and that peace. But at the same time, our primary motivation is to please Krishna. And that's a dance that always happens. The more we please Krishna, the more happy we become. And it keeps going on. So 32 to 35. Kim no rajyena govinda kim bhogera jivitena va yeshamarthe kankshitam no rajam bhoga sukhani cha taime avastita yuddhe pranam tyaktva dhanani cha acharya pitara putra statheva cha pitamaha matula susra putra shala samandhinas tatha etan hantum ichchami gnato sudana अपीते लोक्यस्य राजस्य हेतो किं नु महि कृते निहत्य धर्तराष्ट्रान्न कापीतिशा जनार्दनः. O Govinda, of what avail to us are a kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and property, and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. What pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? So these are like the Kim verses. Kim no rajyena govinda, Kim bhogera jivitena va, Kim eshamarte kankshitam rajam bhoga sukhanicha. So Kim and Ka, and like the last line says, Ka pritisha janardana. So what's in it for me and what good it is for me? What will it do for me? This is the mentality that is expressed in these verses in all different variations. Um, uh, uh, yeah, go ahead.
I think all of this talk about, like, is it okay to be selfish in spiritual life? How much are we allowed to enjoy things or not, in what way? I think it comes from a confusion between the spiritual self and the false self and the real self. Because we're slowly learning that the false self always wants to have pleasure and is not going to be satisfied. And then when we embark upon spiritual life and we start to realize that that's not the way, we think we need to give that up. And we do in a certain way. But what I think initially we don't realize is that you're not just giving something up. You're exchanging it. Like as Vidarbha said, you're refining your taste and you're getting something in exchange. So for example, if I'm out on the street and somebody comes up to me and says, hey, give me your money, then I feel bad because for me, it's just a loss. I didn't get anything in return. But if I go to a store and a shop and I give them that money, might be the exact same amount, and then I get an ice cream in return. I don't feel bad about having given that money because of what I'm getting. So yeah, in Krishna consciousness, we're getting more pleasure, more joy, more love, more everything, but I think it needs to develop also too.
Yeah. Yes, and that's a very good point, because we are not doing it for that exchange. We are just doing it. Initially, it may seem like that oh, I chant and I get that happiness. So that let me chant better, or let me chant more, and I guess it's okay. And as we keep on doing that, then that exchange mentality goes away. And even when we don't feel anything, even we don't experience that peace or happiness, we still want to do it for Krishna's pleasure, and that gradually will happen as we progress in spiritual life. And it happens on some days and it may not happen on other days. But at the same time, we continue. We are not dependent on that exchange.
And yet it is simultaneous, right? Pleasing Krishna and experiencing that satisfaction within the heart is simultaneous. So in fact, the more we can align ourselves to Krishna's pleasure, then to that extent, our pleasure is natural. Just like Prabhupada gives the example that when you feed the stomach, the different parts of the body are naturally nourished. It's not that it is, it's a separate endeavor, right? So I think it's when we understand this principle, because I've been thinking about this principle myself, and it seems like, when we can really understand and appreciate this principle, that This is all I have to do. There is no separate endeavor for my own personal satisfaction that is required, because I am a part of, just like the hand is a part of the body. And so when the body and the stomach is nourished, then the hand is automatically nourished. There is no separate nourishment, right? So I think it's because we see that separation, right, that we feel that somehow we have to separately nourish the hand or separately nourish the toe. But it's all part of that same whole.
Yeah, that's a very good point. At the same time, it may happen that when we are practicing spiritual life, that we may not experience that happiness, or we are going through a tough time. And we should not equate that to that maybe I'm not pleased with Krishna, because Krishna may be pleased, and because of his pleasure, we may go through some purification or some difficult time, and it's happening because of Krishna's will. I guess embracing that also as part of Krishna's will, and being satisfied in continuing to do what we are doing. Okay. So we can read this purport. Dominic, would you like to read the purport?
Arjuna has addressed Lord Krishna as Govinda because Krishna is the object of all pleasures for cows and the senses. By using this significant word, Arjuna indicates that Krishna should understand what will satisfy Arjuna's senses, but Govinda is not meant for satisfying our senses. If we try to satisfy the senses of Govinda, however, then automatically our own senses are satisfied. Materially, everyone wants to satisfy his senses, and he wants God to be the order supplier for such satisfaction. The Lord will satisfy the senses of the living entities as much as they deserve, but not to the extent that they may covet. But when one takes the opposite way, namely when one tries to satisfy the senses of Govinda without desiring to satisfy one's own senses, then by the grace of Govinda, all desires of the living entity are satisfied. Arjuna's deep affection for community and family members is exhibited here partly due to his natural compassion for them. He is therefore not prepared to fight. Everyone wants to show his opulence to his friends and relatives, but Arjuna fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed on the battlefield, and he will be unable to share his opulence after victory. This is a typical calculation of material life. The transcendental life, however, is different. Since a devotee wants to satisfy the desires of the Lord, he can, Lord willing, accept all kinds of opulence for the service of the Lord. And if the Lord is not willing, he should not accept a farthing. Arjuna did not want to kill his relatives, and if there were any need to kill them, he desired that Krishna kill them personally. At this point, he did not know that Krishna had already killed them before their coming into the battlefield, and that he was only to become an instrument for Krishna. This fact is disclosed in the following chapters. As a natural devotee of the Lord, Arjuna did not like to retaliate against his miscreant cousins and brothers, but it was the Lord's plan that they should all be killed. The devotee of the Lord does not retaliate against the wrongdoer, but the Lord does not tolerate any mischief done to the devotee by the miscreants. The Lord can excuse a person on his own account, but he excuses no one who has done harm to his devotees. Therefore, the Lord was determined to kill the miscreants, although Arjuna wanted to excuse them.
Thank you. So there are a lot of wonderful points in this verse. Let's hear from you guys what you picked on. Let's see. Gunjan, do you have any thoughts? Anything that stuck to you?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Not really, not now.
Okay, thank you. Eric, any thoughts from you? Okay. Or anybody else? Just go for it.
I liked he excuses no one who has done harm to his devotees, Prabhu. That's most I like. Like he can take any harm that comes to him, but when someone ill-treats his devotees, he will not put up with it. And that is such an assurance for all of us who are trying to be his devotees.
Thank you. That's a very good point, and that's the main reason this whole battle of Kurukshetra was fought. Because Krishna, uh, it's not that he was taking a revenge, because Krishna cannot take revenge against anybody. Everybody is his dear part and parcel. But he wanted the miscreants to be killed, because that way they would get the proper purification for their misdeeds, and then they would advance to the next destination. So anybody who is harmed by Krishna's will, we should not think that Krishna was taking the side of the Pandavas and he was taking some kind of revenge against the Kauravas. This happens so many times that Krishna kills somebody or gets somebody killed. But Prabhupada explains in many places that whatever happens by Krishna's desire and will is all good. And the recipient of that punishment also receives the mercy of Krishna, and they advance to a much higher spiritual destination. For example, all the people who were killed in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, um, they were all transferred to the spiritual realm. And normally this would not happen. If they died of their own free will, or if they died because of the force of their karma, they would maybe go into a higher or lower species and then continue in this material world. But because Krishna planned this battle and this war, and everybody was killed because of his desire, they were all liberated, and then they went back to the spiritual world. So therefore, everything Krishna does is all good. And we should not wonder how can Krishna take sides, because he cannot take sides.
I wanted to read something. This is in connection to what we had previously discussed about how, we can, it's like an exchange, like, like how Delia was saying that we can go and we can get something better. This is a very beautiful section actually from Srimad Bhagavatam. And then there is a commentary by a great Acharya, one of our great Acharyas. So I'll just read this. It's very, very wonderful. So, real intelligence is to devise a plan to attain something that is unattainable. Listen to this verse. The process of bhakti is the supreme intelligence of the intelligent and the cleverness of the most clever. For by following it, one can, in this very life, make use of the temporary and unreal body to achieve me, the eternal reality. And then Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this verse is the touchstone among verses and the essence of the Lord's teachings. If this verse shines in one's heart, such a person will shine forth in the assembly of devotees. And it goes on, in the material world, one is considered to be intelligent if with a minimum investment, one achieves great results. For example, if one obtains 1 million gold coins by investing only 1 coin, then such a person is considered to be highly intelligent. Krishna once told his friend Uddhava that among all those who are intelligent, he considers his devotee to be the most intelligent, since the devotee offers his or her temporary body, which is here today and gone tomorrow, in devotional service in order to attain the Lord forever. Krishna says, the inhabitants of planet Earth who are mortal can become my devotees and offer me their bodies, which are not worth much and which are prone to old age and disease. In exchange, I, the fountainhead of overflowing joy and sweetness, give myself to them, together with my priceless ornaments, bracelets, and crown. So anyways, it goes on. What does it mean to give one's body? But I just wanted to share that. That was what we're saying. Huh?
Where is this from?
This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, right? This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is verse 12th canto, 3rd chapter, 51st verse.
12:351. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And then in that sense, it's a bargain, right? It's a bargain of lifetimes, because doing something which is worthless anyways, you get something which is supremely worth.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was referring to more earlier. I was talking more about not so much about devotees taking their practice transactionally, which I agree that that's not how it should be, but that people who are not engaged in spiritual life and are in ignorance, they're often afraid to develop in a spiritual life because they think that they're just going to give things up, things that they're attached to, you know? So like people are like, oh, how could I ever become a vegetarian? I love my hamburgers so much or whatever. And because they don't know everything else that you do get, you know, or that you do experience, or that you do gain, which is knowledge of your own self and Krishna, which is huge. They just, that's, I think, also why a lot of people confuse spiritual life with just austerities. And so that they think that they're just going to lose everything that they like and want and enjoy forever. And they don't see, yeah, exactly. You know.
Yeah, exactly. It's we don't know that's where lies our real self-interest, right? And so we think it's going to just take everything away from me, and I'm just going to be this unhappy person, and then hence we quit or we don't even approach it. So I think it's so counterintuitive, right? Also, sometimes, you know, it's not like in the material world, we have a certain way in which we experience perceived happiness. We think, okay, this is how I can be happy. And in spiritual life, all of a sudden, it's about offering ourselves and giving our, you know, bodies and our false ego. And that can be a little scary in the beginning. But if one just stays around and just kind of goes along, then one sees that actually that's what we are looking for ultimately.
I have
yeah.
I have another example, Mataji. Like I was thinking about Shreyas and prayers.
Yes.
Shreyas is something like, suppose I start to chant. Beginning, it sounds so monotonous. Like after 2 or 3 rounds, I'm like, you know, I'm getting bored, and then I still have to persevere. Like so, in the beginning, I don't feel the sweetness, but as I keep persevering, you know, I totally begin to experience the sweetness. But prayers is like pleasant, you know. Like suppose I'm watching a movie, I get the enjoyment right then and there. Like so, I'm like able to that activity seems a lot more pleasurable for me than sitting and chanting, you know. But that activity that is so pleasurable might turn out to be poisonous at the end. Like so, you know, when you have to take up chanting, it might not be as enticing. But as you keep going, there will be rewards. Like so, that's the difference between spiritual activity and a worldly activity. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Like
perfect, it is perfect. Thank you. I was actually, before you spoke, that was the point I had, and I thought, oh, maybe it's too much, so I didn't share that. But yeah, the prayers and the shreyas, that's exactly right. That you know, Prabhupada gives an example in that regard, that, you know, a little child, he doesn't want to go to school, and so the parents, they say, no, you have to go to school, right? In the beginning, it's like painful for him, but it's because, you know, he goes to school, so that's how he gets educated, and then in the long run, he actually experiences a much happier and a much more stable life. So that's kind of Shreyas and Prayas. Very nice.
Let's see what questions are there from here. So Arjuna addresses Krishna with many names here. The first name is Govinda. So we all understand what is the significance of Govinda, right? Go means senses or the cows, and Vinda means one who brings pleasure to them. So Arjuna is addressing Krishna as Govinda because he wants Krishna to bring him pleasure by telling him, do not fight. And then he addresses Krishna as Madhusudana. That's the second name he uses. That this word is Ganatoapi Madhusudana. So Madhusudana is the killer of demon Madhu, and he's basically telling Krishna that you have killed this big demon Madhu, and you are fully capable of killing all these people. So why don't you kill them and leave me alone? Basically, don't engage me in killing business. And then lastly, he uses Krishna's name as Janardana. Janardana means maintainer of all living entities. So he's again kind of taunting Krishna that you are the maintainer of all living entities. How can you cause them to be killed? So you should maintain them rather than engaging me in killing them. So that's another kind of, so all the three names that he uses here for Krishna, they are actually kind of double meaning here.
I think Gunjan has a question. Maybe someone else wants to respond also. Well, her question is, what is false ego? What comes under it? Anybody wants to explain this question? Answer this question?
Let's see. Let me call out to somebody.
Well, whoever wants to do it. Are you calling out? Yeah, go ahead, Delia.
False ego is our sense of, I think it's several things. First of all, it's our sense of being separate from God or from Krishna, where I think the true ego or the true self, there is still an identity, but but you're related. But in the false ego, maybe you don't see that relationship. And then also because you don't, the false ego is associated with material desires and the material reality.
Okay. Nice. Anybody else? What is the conception? Yeah.
I think the false ego is like the distinguishing factor, in that we think about, like which, I guess plays a big role in making decisions. It could be something that makes us feel that we like something and we don't like something. It always makes us feel like we like some people or we don't like some people. That's sort of, I think that's what it does is it just distinguishes everything for us from ourselves.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can I take a stab?
Yeah, that is true.
I think the way I approach it is to understand false ego. First, I have to understand true ego. Then only I can understand what is false ego. And the true ego is, and ego basically is identifying of self, right? Then so the true ego is, who am I really? What is my real self? So then, then we basically understand that my real self is a part and particle of the supreme God and Krishna. So once I understand, so false ego then basically means not having this understanding that we are part and parcels of Krishna, and thinking ourselves as being independent and behaving in a way that we are independent of Krishna.
It's very nice. It's very nice. And then we can also add another part to it, which is that I don't, so you're absolutely right. Identity, what's my identity? So my real ego is when I understand that my identity is a servant of Krishna. My false ego, my false identity is thinking that I'm separate from Krishna and assuming the identity of being part of matter, right? And identification with this world of matter, that I am this body. So that I am a servant of Krishna gets replaced by I am a product of matter. Right? So I don't know, Gunjan, if that helps or if you have any further thoughts on that.
Hare Krishna Mataji, yeah. But how can we implement in our day-to-day life? How can I understand that this is my false ego, and and what should be my true ego for in this condition or in this situation? Somebody says ki, sometimes we don't like some person and we like some person. So how can we relate in that situation that is this my false ego, or how could it replace with true ego, and what should I think in that situation?
Very nice question. Very nice question. Haribol, you want to go ahead? Huh?
Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's a very good question. And again, it's the lens through which we see the world. So when we see any situation, somebody liking me, somebody not liking me, when it's seen through my own lens of false ego, then just like what Arjuna is doing, right? I'll say, okay, I like this person because this person is my friend. Why is he my friend? Because he's nice to me. He says nice things, or he gives me some pleasure, or whatever. I feel happy in his company, right? So my lens, and then why is someone my enemy? Because for whatever reason he doesn't like me, he's mean to me, blah blah blah, right? So we have a way, we have a lens through which we view everything. This is good, this is not good. This is my friend, this is my enemy. This is pleasurable, this is not pleasurable. And the lens, at the heart of that lens is my own satisfaction. So that is false ego. Now, when we change that lens and when we apply the Krishna lens, right? So then we are looking at the world, looking at everything as in relationship to Krishna. So even if a person is behaving in a terrible way with us, we would actually evaluate that person's behavior in terms of, we would see it as Krishna would see it. First of all, we would see, well, can I do something to help this person, encourage this person in some way? Of course, even for a devotee, sometimes a devotee may choose not to associate with such a person, but not because I have a personal dislike for that person. It could be because I feel that my associating with that person will make that person more offensive, and will maybe because of those offenses, he may go even further away from Krishna. So I'm still making a decision to connect with the person or not to connect with the person, but the foundation of that decision is not my own pleasure or lack of pleasure. It is what is good for that person's ultimate good. How will this thing assist this person in his or her relationship with Krishna? So we are completely changing the narrative. It's no longer about us. It's about Krishna, and it is about that living entity's relationship with Krishna and me as an instrument. So whether that person is nice to me or not nice to me is not my personal concern. And of course, it's a very generalized approach. There are specifics. In specific situations, we have to also consult and see how should I act. But in general, this is the principle.
Yeah, we see that every person, like Prahlad Maharaj says, there is no enemy or friend. It's all an illusion created by the mind. So when we are doing that, when we start feeling that somebody is my friend and somebody is my enemy, or I like somebody and I do not like somebody, all we are kind of expressing to ourselves or to others is something, we are revealing our attachment. There's something we are attached to in reference to somebody being our friend or somebody being our enemy. And when we are faced with that situation, I guess rather than looking at the person as our enemy or friend, we should, from spiritual lens, we should look at our attachment. That's an opportunity to examine our attachment. What is causing me to dislike this person? And what can I do to turn that dislike into a mood of service? Because if we take the mood of service, then we can offer service to every single living entity. Even if they like us or not, we are not affected by their like or dislike. And if we take the mood of an enjoyer, which we all conditioned souls have, then we'll definitely have some favorites and some people that we don't like. So it's an opportunity, and this will happen to us, that we like some people, we don't like some people, but not leaving it at that, but taking the next step and finding out why I don't like this person, and what's in it, what is wrong inside me because of which I do not like this person.
That's a good point. And actually, a devotee, one of the qualifications or a quality of a devotee is that he has no enemies. There is no one that he does not like, because he has no stake, right? The reason we like or we don't like is because we have a stake and we are looking for something. But a devotee has no enemy because he's not looking for anything. Right. So I don't know if that helps, Gunjan, if you have any further comments.
No, Mataji, it's really help a lot. But how to implement, and I think we should have practice to implement in our life, to act in such situation and to accept such people.
Right. Yeah, and I think there is no shortcut. I think the process of chanting allows us to, before we can see everyone as part and parcel of Krishna, we have to see ourselves as part and parcel of Krishna, right? So then, our vision changes. So it's a gradual process, but it can start. We can, and the next time somebody really gets on our nerves and really annoys us, then, we start seeing that person like, oh yeah, this person is also part of Krishna. And we start building those muscles. But eventually, as we keep practicing and studying this knowledge and really trying to understand this knowledge, there will be a natural purification of the heart. And by that natural purification, one will be no longer affected. When somebody treats us badly or treats us nicely, we will not be affected by it. So it will all happen in due course. But at least knowing this, even if we may have some, we can actually process and let go. At least we can start doing that. That if, we may not be able to immediately forgive a person when they offend us, but we can, we can start applying it. And then, maybe in first time we'll forgive them in 7 days, and next time we'll forgive them in 5 days, like that, So gradually it will be immediate.
A small thought, Mataji, like maybe if the person is being repeatedly mean or not treating you well, and you've tried so hard to forgive and it's not happening, maybe for a small period of time you can take yourself away from the situation, because
Yes.
you're also human and there's only so much you can do. Like if
Absolutely.
you're all the time receiving, and how much can you receive that
Yes.
kind of treatment?
That is a very, very good point, very practical point. And based on our own qualification, we should try to take those steps also, that we can create some boundaries around that person, and just do our best. Very nice.
I also think that the false self is materially entrenched and focused on, motivated by its own desires and pleasure. So the problem is that we get too attached to the things that we want, but then we can think about, oh, like, why do I want those things? Why do I want this, or why do I want that? And so most of the time, the whole reason, everything that motivates us to take action in the first place is we take action to get something. We want something, so we're motivated to do something so we can get something, so that we can get a certain outcome that we think will bring us pleasure. But then as you develop the real self, which is connected in Krishna consciousness, then you're not trying to get anything. Any action that you're not trying to get anything, but we're still alive and we still have to take action. So any actions that you take are for Krishna's pleasure, but you don't have an attachment to the outcome one way or another. And I think like the way to develop that is, so basically like if it's for your own pleasure and you're thinking about it materially, it's more than likely the false self. And that takes a while to shed, and a long time, because it's so deeply entrenched. And so even just like chanting is like gradually beginning to be like a little bit less, like thinking of yourself a little bit less, and Krishna or everyone else a little bit more every day. And then the chanting process also works on you in ways that you don't even really see until you start seeing the fruits of, not the fruits, the symptoms.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a beautiful point, Delia. Yeah, so we can see how Arjuna is helping us churn a lot of our own thoughts and desires and attachments, and helping us understand what we should not do in our lives. So we are actually very grateful to Arjuna for showing the dark side of this false ego, this conditioned nature. It's coming out like very openly, and Arjuna is being very bold in terms of expressing himself in front of the whole universe, actually, and for eternity. So it's almost 8:35 now, so we'll end it here. So please read the next few verses, and on Friday we'll do the Leela Kirtan, which will continue our description of the Damodar pastime, where Krishna is being tied to the grinding mortar by Yashoda, the baby Krishna, who's very naughty and is full of mischiefs. He's going to be punished. Who can punish God? But we'll see how Yashoda, the mother of Krishna, she's going to punish Krishna. And this whole pastime is very heart touching, and it really brings out the deep relationship of love between Krishna and his devotees.
Also, sorry. No, I was just saying that it's also really significant that Friday, Saturday, this is like the Diwali time, and so this pastime actually happened on the day on Saturday. So it sort of prepares our consciousness because Friday is like the smaller, like in India they call it like small Diwali and then big Diwali. So Saturday, you know. So
and also
nice
we get to hear Mataji singing, because that's a beautiful voice.
Yeah, we'll do Leela. Yeah, we'll do Kirtan and we'll go through the pastime. And then after that, we'll do another pastime, Govardhan Leela. Right?
Yep. Then next Friday, we'll do the lifting of the hill. Krishna lifts this Govardhan hill. That's another beautiful pastime with a lot of lessons to learn. So we'll do that next Friday. So Fridays we'll keep for getting some nectar and some butter for the heart.
Actually, Sachinandan Maharaj calls it therapeutic hearing. He says this is therapeutic hearing. And so it's just letting ourselves just absorb this Krishna Katha. Actually, he heard something really, really beautiful. He said that, you know, like if you want to go live in any country, you have to get socialized, right? You have to learn how people interact there, what goes on. And then you spend enough number of years in a particular country, like Lokadaksha and I, we moved to America. I mean, I moved here 25 years ago. And over a period of time, you learn, you know, the different nuances of living in a certain culture. So he was saying that it's the same way when we hear about the spiritual world and its pastimes, then we get socialized, you know, we learn, you know, what goes on there, and it allows us to experience a different, we enter into that realm actually just by hearing it. So
we learn the lingo, and we learn how Krishna responds and how devotees respond to Krishna and what they say to each other. And
so yeah, we'll do it Friday.
Thank you all for your
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Till the end, I'm so happy. It's nice to be with everyone. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.